something that like coming out of this fast, choose discomfort over comfort, growth over stagnancy, action over excuses, apologies over ego, trust over disbelief, surrender over control, and most importantly, faith over your fear. Hey Bestie, welcome back to the Own Your Air podcast. It's Yolanda and Ralphie is joining me today. Welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're here either because you watched part 1 where I covered my testimony and essentially what led me to finding God and being lit up about God, which this little one sitting on my lap is a huge part of that, if not the biggest part of that. I want to share with you my Daniel fast and the experience, why I did the Daniel fast, what led me to it, and the biggest breakthroughs and takeaways. I want to always preface this and tell you I am a baby Christian girl. She is brand new. I am 40 years old. God and the Bible, being a follower of Christ, all these things are new to me. I am absolutely an imperfect human that is in pursuit of a perfect God. I believe part of my purpose on earth is to help people really understand that you can be just as you are and you are 100% loved, and it's all about you working with God and becoming your best self. The Daniel fast, girl. How did I even find out about the Daniel fast? You'll know from the testimony video what happened in January with Ralphie, and it really was a time where I leaned in and I started talking to God very intentionally for the first time. And luckily to have this boy here, we're not lucky. We are, girl, blessed and highly favored, okay? For this little man to be here. When I was driving home from Ralphie leaving the specialist and us having at least a diagnosis that looked clean and nothing to be concerned with, I was listening to podcasts and specifically about fasting. And our church, I didn't go to church the very first weekend, so I missed the whole tee up to starting fasting. But I was really just intrigued, not eating or fasting from certain things, going certain periods of time without food or drink as a way to starve your flesh and feed your spirit, and sitting in prayer. And I just kept hearing the power of prayer and fasting, that was just what kept coming up from our pastors at church to Philip Anthony Mitchell. I'm telling you, I don't want to say obsessed, but that man, he's really got the Holy Spirit and just his energy. He is a magnet. It takes people like him that are magnetic in a way for more people just to come to God. That is the ultimate purpose, right? To find and to know God. I'm driving home. It's late at night. I've been crying all day after Ralphie's procedure because there was so much uncertainty in that. I was just binging these podcasts about fasting, and I'm like, okay, that sounds like something I can get behind. Sounds like a little bit of a challenge, if you know what I mean. And my friend said that she wanted to read this book about fasting, and she sent it to me, and I said, oh, let me send you the Audible. I had so many Audible credits. Here, grab an Audible credit on me. And when I did that, though, I sent the Audible credit to myself at first. I was like, oh, man. But again, hindsight, that was God working, saying, girl, I'm calling you, honey. Are you going to come? Don't you want to come learn about fasting? I don't think God sounds like that. I start listening to this book, and I'd probably get a quarter, if not 1/3 of the way of the book into the book, and I'm like, I am going to fast. And I have a tendency to jump into things. I can be really impulsive, which blessing and a curse in ways. And so I was like, oh, I think I'm going to do this, but let me sleep on it for a little bit. Everything went on with Ralphie. January 19th, I'm raising my hand declaring that I want to walk with Jesus, change the world, and live like Jesus. That Monday, I'm losing my job. And so it became really easy that was January 20th, so the days in between that, to just sit and to think, I need a reset. God is literally giving me this clean, blank slate, enough money for me to support myself for a month, 2, maybe 3. It's going to be tight, but we probably can get there. God's giving me this opportunity. What am I going to do with it? Everything in it was fast because I didn't have a practice with prayer. I could get one. I didn't know where to start and read the Bible. If I fast, I could use this 21-day devotional that my church had online, and that's where I started. So there are multiple kinds of fasting. I'm not going to get into all of them because I'm not an expert, But the fast that I did was the Daniel fast, which is 21 days where you eliminate dairy, meat, alcohol, which I'd already done prior to that, processed foods, gluten, because you can only really have whole grains. And for the longest time, I didn't think that I could eat white potatoes while I was on my fast. And I am a potato lover, girl. But part of doing the fast is about starving your flesh. Saying no to the things that you want, saying no to instant gratification, instead going sitting, praying with God, and just simply denying yourself. And while I could have had white potatoes on the fast, they were personal for me. I've eaten plant-based before, so this way of eating was not hard for me, if that makes sense, because I had done it before. But I wanted to really say, this is a challenge. This is challenging me. My spirit needs to be challenged right now so that I can see what God is doing with me, so that I can be closer to Him, trusting fully on surrendering into Him. And there were so many parts of the fast that I'd be like, I really want some French fries. That is your flesh hungry, right? That is, I don't want to say it's the enemy, but that is just the part of us that just loves that instant gratification and essentially starving yourself from that. So that is the Daniel fast. It's based off of Daniel in the Bible. I don't really know the whole story, girl. Told you, baby Christian over here, and I don't need to pretend like I know the whole story. Daniel had the opportunity to eat like lavishly when he was with one of these kings. I think Neza, I don't know how to say his name. It starts with an N. And he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give up wine. I'm going to give up all these good foods. And he wanted Daniel to interpret his dreams. And he had these other people in his palace, but nobody could interpret the dreams except for Daniel. So Daniel was like promoted into this ruler, and the king calls on him some different times to interpret these dreams. Daniel has this vision up for himself, and it was a very unsettling vision that he had. He's seeing things are going to go down. So in those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. So that's where we, as like regular old humans, get the Daniel fast from. So I just started looking at this as this is a way for me to develop a closeness that I would like to have. And what better time? I don't have a job right now to pour in and focus. I will say that when I first started this, it was very much like, oh, let me see what I look like in my bathing suit. Can we tell the changes? And yes, those things happened. But on the other side of that has been this deep transformation, me really looking at the way that I've carried myself, how things that I've been doing, treating other people. It also was a lot of reading scripture and learning how to pray and coming up with a solid structure that fuels me every morning. And it's not perfect. There have been some days like today I didn't wake up and do my routine, and I do feel a little bit different when I'm not doing that. I am going to keep my prayers, things that I asked for, to myself. I prayed a lot for other people in my fast. One of the things that I did do when I started my fast was I wrote down a list of things that I was needing either clarity or help, guidance with, and just giving that to God, and then showing up every day, not always asking or for the same prayer, but having that intimacy with God, sitting with Him. So I made this decision to go on the Daniel fast, and to do this was not necessarily a hard decision. I actually was really excited about it. But I only told 2 people initially, and that was my friend and my boyfriend. That was it. Because there is actually a verse in the Bible about fasting, and that fasting is done in private. So in Matthew, I love the book of Matthew, by the way. If you don't know Matthew, girl, get into him. Because Matthew kind of gives us ways to approach many things in our lives, including giving to others and fasting being one of them. Matthew verses 16 through 18. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. You don't talk about when you fast. You don't tell people when you fast. I distinctly remember that, listening to that on the ride home from Ralphie's procedure. And I am a natural sharer. Like, this is what I do. I come online. I like to share stuff with people. And that is something that has been a part of me. But I knew that this fast was personal. I knew that this was between me and God. But that didn't mean that I wasn't going to show up and record myself every single day with reflections, what I might have been eating, breakthroughs, if I was running, all these things. And so I did document my fast for 21 days, and I probably will share these some way. And so I have all this content, but it was just between me and God at first. 5 days into my fast, it was funny. God goes, I'm just going to play this TikTok for you. I just went on a 21-day Daniel fast. 5 days into my fast, I was like, get off social media. Sir, what? Now, I had never planned to share anything about my fast until I was done, but I just assumed I would keep showing up and being online. So I'm like, okay, cool. I will get off social media for the weekend. Then that Sunday, I was standing in the bathroom like, I feel like I'm not done yet. And then I went to church that Sunday, and God confirmed that I was not done yet. Today is day number 8. It's a Friday night. I deleted all my apps. TikTok is gone off of my phone. And I think what really feels to do is to fast all the way from social media through the remainder of my fast. And I got confirmation that I was not done yet. Because guess what my pastor's sermon was about? Social media. So, like a good new little Christian girl that doesn't know how to do her makeup. Because this is where so many of us go wrong. We're asking for things. God's like, bet, I got you. And then we don't want to do the things because they're uncomfortable. Girl, you best believe I obey. The longer I stayed off of social media, the more at peace I felt, less anxious. The less I found myself comparing to anyone else, and also how I was just spending my time. Because when you take this phone away, it's different. And I'm talking really different. In the first few days, it was like, oh, like, what am I doing? 9 to 10 days in, it was so glorious, girl. I'm like, I could just never get back on this app. Or any of them for that matter. But also, God is giving me the gift of showing up and sharing my journey to encourage and inspire others. The longest time I thought it was all about people following me and wanting to build a following. And the truth of the matter, I believe he's always wanted to use me as a way for people to follow him. Evolution I'm going through and sharing will help another woman say, if this girl with her foul mouth can transform and find faith, well, maybe I can too. Glad that you're here. And my only hope is that you follow with a completely open mind. I feel like 21 days of the Daniel fast truly transformed my life. And girl, the coolest part, I truly feel like we're just getting started. Oftentimes we're looking like, how does God talk to me? You might not always hear him. Sometimes it's through a sermon. It's through a verse that you read in the Bible. It's through that random podcast that you put on, and it's like, oh, that was exactly what I needed to hear. So physically from the Daniel fast, I feel like I look different. And it's not just because my hair is done. I lost 5 pounds. I'm now down about 7 pounds from where I started at the beginning of the fast, which is great. I will say a lot of that, though, feels like emotional weight. And I had been running and not drinking and trying to be a little more disciplined, but it took the fast for me to actually get rid of some of that weight. Another thing that I noticed into the fast was detox tongue, girl. By day 2 or 3, you may just have this like gross coating on your tongue, and it's like, where is that coming from? So if you do not have a metal tongue scraper, please, girl, invest in one, because your body is going to be in a detoxifying process when you're doing the fast. And you just scrape it off, but it's things trying to come out, which is, good. We love it. We love the things trying to come out, but also it's a little nasty. Another thing that I noticed was body odor. TMI, but we can go there. But my odor changed underneath my arms. They really didn't smell. I could go and run and not need deodorant a day after. And I know I don't always shower right after I run. I'm just nasty. We're just keeping it real. So that was something else I noticed. When I look at photos of myself, I almost feel like my eyes are sparkling in a way that I'm not used to seeing them sparkle. I have a glow. Other people really have commented on this glow, which I believe that you can see it maybe. If you're a snacker like me, something I found to be really helpful was just having clementines and little cuties on hands, or oranges. I love vitamin C. It was wintertime here, so it was really great. Never felt sick. I had headaches. I ate soy sauce one day, and I think it was just like the sodium in it made my head hurt. But other than that, never really had headaches. Cried a bunch, but not necessarily bad cries. Some of them were. But just cries of gratitude. There was a day where I was walking and it just was reveling in the beauty of outside and how beautiful that was, even though everything was like dead and drab. But here I am just like so happy. I think it's incredible that I was able to log some of my longest training runs while fasted. So that goes to show you, we get so hung up on these things. I did lose a little booty, but it's fine. But we get so but my jeans are fitting better, girl. We got a loosey-goosey these days. But being hung up on the wrong things. Why do I need to be so hung up on aesthetics? I don't. I really don't need to be. I need to be hung up on how is God working through me? Am I being the best vessel for him to work through me? And ironically, what I do believe is that when you get that part, that internal, it's then on the outside, I want other things to change. I did find myself going through my closet, and as I noticed, God's refining me. He's refining me. So that looks like getting rid of certain clothes. And this shirt, while it's very cute, I do think this might be one of the last times I wear it because I feel exposed in a way that I don't need to be exposed, if that makes sense. And I've been an extreme lover of crop tops. And it's not because I'm trying to be like this perfect person. It just is, it's the level up. It's the next call. It's the next space. And that looks a little bit different than how I look right now. So that was huge. If you're someone and you might have a significant other that you enjoy cooking for, so I've been off of work for a while. I was preparing foods for my boyfriend that I absolutely could not taste. So that was really interesting. He, for the most part, I think liked everything that I created or I made. But that, again, was not look at me, God, but a way of God. I am here. I am sacrificing. I am starving my flesh. I'm also serving someone else. I talked about the importance of how one thing that came up was praying for other people. And that also looks like serving other people. So how can you serve other people? And that doesn't necessarily have to be this, you going out to a food bank. Serving might start in your own house. Serving might start with when your dog is out on a walk in the morning, that you're serving them with a little more patience and not rushing them through their walk just because you're cold. What other tips I would give? Have nuts on hand. Pumpkin seeds. You could do the Daniel fast as an athletic girly for sure, because you can get plant-based protein from many different places. What I will say though is be careful when you go to do this should be unprocessed. I saw a lot of people going to like Trader Joe's and buying like vegan meats and stuff. No, girl, no. That's not what we're doing. To me, that defeats the purpose. The purpose for me was as clean, as whole, as natural as possible. So you can have rice cakes on the fast. I would not eat a rice cake. So, and I had them in my pantry. But white potato specifically, and rice cakes this is allowed, but I'm going to show up for my God. So that flesh, honey. But if you're cooking with a partner, some of the things I made, like vegan chili or lentil soup, things like this, you could make your base. So you make your chili and then you just ground up some beef, girl, and simmer it down in a separate container. Totally fine. Like, Ralphie ate meat the whole time. It was fine. But again, I am someone that has eaten plant-based in the past, so there's also that. The breakthroughs that I had on the fast, I did make a list. I've been on social media for a really long time and I always just thought, oh, this is about me building a following, building a brand. But ultimately what I came to was, I've always thought it was about getting people to follow me, but instead it's been me finding Jesus, following him, then inviting others through my own journey. So I really do feel like, in a way, God is pulling me to share my experience for other people to get closer to him. And that becomes very much God-centered, not Yolanda-centered. I had asked for some things. Again, I think sometimes prayers are pretty personal. One of my biggest prayers was not for me. It was for somebody else. And I was starting to see that work. Something else that was kind of crazy that happened on the fast. So I started running again. Have been running since December. I was clocking my fastest times. I ran a 5K and placed 14th out of 101 women. And I'm fasting. Like, that was really wild to me. One thing that I did ask, and one day of my writing was, if there's a better way you wish I'd show up during our time together, I trust that you'll show me. And God kept telling me, kneel. You need to kneel. And for whatever reason, I was like, doing everything but kneeling. I refuse because it just feels very abnormal to me. But the next day I did kneel. But this is just what happened. We're always asking God for stuff or asking the universe or whatever. And it's showing up and then we don't obey. It's like, for what? Why are we asking? I survived Super Bowl, Valentine's Day while on the fast. Again, that was just like willpower and showing God, like, hey, I'm really committed. I'm really into the thing. Are you doing things because you're centered on self, or are you centered in God? And so I do think that's a big shift, particularly for me, and how I'm approaching different things. And I also finished a book on my fast called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. And that was a really good book of bridging the gap between how did Jesus act? How did Jesus carry himself? Because while it's in the Bible, I think it can be a little hard to interpret. I have like 30 things, so I'm not going to read all of these. Big one was you're trying to tackle everything on your own and you have this little faith in God. And that's been a big one as a hyper-independent person. And I do believe God has been calling me to, like, surrender, girl. Surrender. Don't be frantic. Watch how you're operating. Are you operating in faith? Are you operating in fear? And so that was a big one. The whole thing about time and not having time to sit and spend with God. And I know that can feel really easy. I speak as a woman without children. So if you have kids, just ignore me now. But if you don't have kids and you find yourself having no time to sit with God or find time, if you're walking, if you're going to the gym, there are so many opportunities for you to incorporate God into your routine. Be that in a sermon or the YouVersion Bible app. Literally, it will read to you. It will read the Bible to you. So you can find a verse and, sit on it, marinate on it. I will say I learned how to structure a morning routine with how I prayed, which was using the PRAYS method, which was praise, repent, ask, your will, which is essentially your surrender, and then show me what's next. I needed a framework, and so making sure I was doing this, quote, right for God. I wanted to be right for God, and that was helpful, but up until maybe like a week and a half ago, maybe a good 2 weeks into my fast, did I get comfortable to this point of opening my mouth and talking to God and going on what I now like to call my Hey God walks, where it really is just a Hey God and praising him, looking around, taking in the surroundings, celebrating his creation, and then asking or talking to him with whatever I need, what I might be struggling with. And so that's been a transformation. There was a day that I went to church on the fast, and me in worship and like raising my hands so feels kind of different and new, and it's just this restriction. And when I raised my hands, there was this buzzing that I could feel, which was really interesting, and I believe that's just presence. When I was super into woo-woo stuff, I could call on energies and I could really feel them. My body temperature would change. I would get really hot, things like that. I don't really want to talk about this, but this one time I did that, and I was sitting with someone else while doing it, and I said, oh my gosh, do you feel that? And they were like, no, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, this thing is in the room. And I was just really hot and I felt like it was choking me. And yeah, girl, it was wild. I got off social media during my fast. That was huge for me. I'm back on it. I can see how just easily it sucks us in and wanting to change the relationship with that. And I do believe God is waiting for me to get some discipline with just routine and structure before taking me to the next stage of where we're going, the next season that we're going to. And he's always going to pull you through different seasons, but I believe that part of that is in the pruning. It is in the hibernation. It is in the doing things that might feel extremely uncomfortable in the moment of time, but you saying, okay, this is going to be really uncomfortable, brother, but we're going to do it. Ooh. Another big thing was making sure, or wanting to make sure, that I wasn't only praying when things felt really good. So I wrote just about every day of my 21 days, but thinking about prayer and not just going to God when life feels difficult, but going to God and when life feels great and celebrating Him. And I think that a lot of people will tend to go to God when everything feels like it's falling apart versus, God, life feels good today. Thank you so much. This is what I'm praying for. Oh, forgiveness came up really hard in this for me. I actually recorded a podcast, I'll link it here, about forgiveness, specifically for me with my father, some things that have happened in my own past with other people, and really just being like, this is the thing I need to let go. I need to let this go. I can't in my flesh let this go. But God, I know if I truly decide that I'm ready to give this to you, you will take it all from me. And it might not be overnight, but you will take it all from me. The whole idea of like Daniel fast and being on this, you really don't eat anything processed. So I have fruit snacks that had 2 ingredients and I refuse to eat those. So those were a yummy treat when I could finally eat them off of the fast. But you treat your body like trash and not a temple. We want things. We want God to work through us. We want to go out and change the world and do all these things. But we're putting things into our bodies that aren't great. I recorded a podcast where I talked about the things that God started removing from my life. One of which was alcohol. The other was my electronic pacifier, my vape. He was saying, girl, you got to get rid of some of these vices because they are keeping you in this fog. And I'm just grateful that I was like, well, that's weird. I'm not going to drink. Can I say that I'm never going to drink again? I don't know. I actually don't know. But when it comes down to the question of asking, is this Yolanda Center? And I'm doing this because I want to feel socially comfortable. I want to fit in. I want to have fun or whatever that might be, that so many people revolve around substance that, you know, it's kind of like, okay, why would I do that? Just like, why would you do that? For what? Because that's only going to get me further away from the connection that I'm actually trying to create. When I came off the fast, my boyfriend asked, well, what's like the first thing that you want to eat? And I really sat with that. And I went to the grocery store and I bought myself like a nice gourmet meal, like a filet mignon and crab meat. And I made crab cakes for the first time ever. But it wasn't like I want to go to Chick-fil-A or I want to go to McDonald's. And I've actually made a promise to myself that I'm going to stay away from those things through April. And so really challenging myself in that way, again, is this feeding my flesh or is it feeding my spirit? Is this God-led or is this self-centered, Yolanda-led, not potentially going to get me as far as where he could get me? And it really comes like asking questions and approaching things that way. The WWJD, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus respond? And you kind of living that way. Like, I get it. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. And that is why Jesus was on the cross. It was for our sins. It was for us to be perfectly imperfect people. But I will say that the more that you learn, the more that you sit, naturally I just find myself wanting to make different choices than I potentially would have made in the past. talk to God before you talk to ChatGPT or a friend. No matter how great of advice that they may give you, I really feel like part of all of this is being in relationship with Him first and foremost, and asking Him, like, is this the right direction? Is this where I'm supposed to go? Is this where you see me going? And not depending on that from other people. That is a huge one for me. And then the last thing I want to say is the idea of us waiting for this perfect time to, I'll do it when I XYZ. I'll do that when I finally reach this milestone. Instead of just taking action. And I do believe God rewards action. Whether it's the right action or not, He's got your back. So it's going to be you just stepping on that faith all the time and trusting. Even if this is not the right action for me to take, I trust in God to course correct. The other thing that's been pretty significant for me is my language. My mouth has changed a lot in the sense of the words that I use, really watching and not saying, oh my gee, but goodness. Small things like that, not cursing, big one. And it hasn't felt like I'm censoring myself. It just comes back down to, is this who God truly wants me to be? Is this how God wants me to present? And I do feel like I would love to be a speaker and a great podcaster. And I believe that God has me in this pruning season. He is like, all right, baby girl, I got you. But girl, for a little bit, we're gonna have to do some tune-up. We're gonna have to do a little spring cleaning and get you ready. And I do believe that one of the ways that He's doing that is with how I'm eating and then how I'm speaking. Because in the how I'm eating, even up till now, I have eaten today, but I still basically am fasting until about 2 o'clock, sometimes a little bit earlier than that. But basically, I am not breaking my fast until way later in the day. And I, for the most part, feel okay. I need God to help me with sleep. Girl, that didn't magically get better, but that is a big one that I still need to be tuning up in just so that I can be my best self. So again, I ate a lot of yummy things. I've recorded some videos of those. Really excited to share those with you guys. I have some other ideas for just like resources I want to make to help people have this connection, because the way that this has changed my life in such a short period of time, I would love for the people that are open to it to experience that just one time. I've heard a lot of people say that their greatest fear is not meeting God at the end, or meeting God at the end and not being able to be with Him in eternity, and how scary that is. And that is where we start making those really hard choices and the things that are extremely uncomfortable for ultimately that ultimate, like, this is the thing. This is where we're getting to. Yeah, so when it comes to my relationship with God, again, I feel it's one of these things. I call on Him. I love my Hey God walks. I love the mornings where I'm very intentional about not touching my phone, sitting down, being with Him. I'm putting restrictions on my phone for this matter because I know that I need Him. When we stop being so self-reliant or so hyper-independent, and this is a thing that comes up in my relationship, my boyfriend wants to help me and I don't want to allow it. I have this like resistance towards anyone helping. And I do think that the more that I lean in and I start surrendering and trusting in God, that it just is going to be easier for me to trust other people and to be open to suggestions, feedback, criticism, like whatever it might be, to be open to that. And so I'm grateful that, you know, God is showing me that in a way. Again, I just think it's so cool to lean on Him. I've heard so many people talking about giving it to God. And when it's like, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm giving this to you. Like that, the weight that comes off of you just in that is so powerful. That is so huge. And so would I do the Daniel fast again? Absolutely. I could see this easily be doing something I would do once a quarter, kind of how I would once upon a time re-up and do psychedelics. I could see me going on a fast once a quarter for that closeness. I think that the next fast that I would like to try would be to do a full 1 day fast where maybe you just drink water. And I mean, honestly, to be quite honest, like I could do that anyway because there's many days where I don't really eat. Yeah, I think that's it. I feel like I'm giving you a broad view of I think sometimes we do these kind of things and we want like, let me show you this in my hand. And it wasn't all like that for me. And that is the internal work. I really do think that God set with me in this fast for this is internal, baby girl. Like, we're going in. And it's caused me to look at a lot of my patterns, my behavior, my mood, my responses. Humbling. Very humbling. And figuring that out. Because I do think that there's a better version of me that I can be, and I'm wanting to find that, so that's the light that shines out into the world. I talked to my mom a lot more when I was on the fast. I think it's just because, I was off social media, and there was just more space, and I had more time to talk. So I did find myself talking to her a lot more, and that we should just be talking to our parents all the time anyway. Another huge thing, though, was the not sharing this, and understanding that sometimes, or maybe even more oftentimes, that I need to talk to God first. And I need to ask him if he wants me to share these things. And I think that will be a big shift in my relationship and in my content. God, what do you need me to share? God, what is the purpose that you have for me? God, what characteristics do you need to take away from me? God, what characteristics do you need me to build? And asking him those questions instead of reading a self-help book. I'm just saying, you might be able to find those things in a self-help book, but it's a lot different when you start really having that relationship with God. And I'll say this, and I'll probably keep saying this, but I think many of us are seeking something, and we don't necessarily know that thing that we're seeking. And so when I look back on this, I look at that seeking. All of this was a lead up to this final point. Some people get to a rub a crystal one time and now, woo, baby, I'm here with God. And for me, it was like, let me rub on these crystals. Let me do these little, witch readings or tarot card readings. It's no shade. It's just where I was. These little tarot card readings, and then, ooh, girl, let me do a little psychedelic journey. Talking to the universe, journaling to the universe. And then essentially when Ralphie got sick, it was like, I don't know about any of that. Let me back myself up into the wall. And I was so backed into the wall that all I could do was just raise my hands in a sense and say, God, like, take me, like, please. And I really believe truly that once you have that, you don't unsee it. You can't unfeel it. Again, I have so much gratitude for the fact that I found this so much later in my adult life. Even though, I'm like, oh my gosh, it would have been so great to have found this a long time ago. But again, it's always in his timing, because it might have been the whole thing of wrong door, right time, or right time, wrong door. Either way. So, you get where you're going, but I do believe we can expedite where we might be going if we so decide to open our hearts to God, if we start talking to him, praying with him, asking for what we need. Being self-aware and saying, these are my flaws. This is where I'm making mistakes. This is where I'm messing up. God, please help me. So yeah, while at this point of recording this, a week and a half from my Daniel fast, I don't have all these, let me show you, this is the thing that happened, but I have this little bubble who's so healthy, and that's absolutely priceless. My spirit, my energy, my confidence, it's all just a level up, and I'm so grateful for that. And my belief has completely leveled up. And again, I do think sometimes prayers are private, so I will keep those things to myself. But if I do go back, just out of curiosity, on the first day was when I journaled out everything. Oh, something that I was asking for was releasing judgment and comparison, and that's a big one. I think that sometimes when you get to a certain walk in your life and you're like, in a sense, like arrived, and if people around you aren't there, sometimes it's just kind of hard to find that common middle, like, you're here, I'm here, we're on our own individual journeys. That can be hard. But a prayer that I am very open to share was, during this 21 days and beyond, I pray for a stronger relationship with you. I pray to never lose faith in you, even when the enemy tries to convince me otherwise. I prayed for how I'm meant to be of service in this season of my life. there's something that, yeah, there's just some things that like I want to be able to come back to this little book and say, I prayed for this and now it's here. Something else I'll share is I pray to become more like Jesus' disciple every day and to share your word. I want to come to you humbly with the medium I am meant to share as you'll reveal that to me. I think we could have a lot of impact using social media in the podcast. So again, those were just my prayers. And I'm really excited to see how life continues to unfold as I step into this journey just more and more and leaning in. I look forward to one thing that I will say that I wish I had. So most churches at the beginning of every year, they will fast together. So our church fasted January 6th through whatever 27th that would have been. I do think that you would have a lot of power in doing this with other people, but essentially it was a solo journey, just a journey with myself. But I do feel like even if you just had a Bible study or a prayer group or something like that, that you're meeting up with them once a week to talk about takeaways, talk about your experiences would have been extremely helpful. Again, I documented for 21 days, didn't miss a beat, wasn't always like the same style of documenting, but there are some breakthroughs that I was having as I was going along. So I'm excited to share those just in a little mini series. It's so much content that I've got to figure out what to do with. And yeah, I would say if you have questions, drop them in the comments. I had a lot of people mention that they have tried a fast and had a hard time finishing it, or because like life just happened. And yes, life is going to happen. And one of the ways that I would encourage you, if you've fasted, maybe you've fallen off before, is life is going to happen. But think about Jesus on the cross. And it's like, I mean, what? You can say no to a Twinkie. I like that literally is just where like you can put your mind, and it's not being like holier than thou. It's just this like a different way that you can be thinking about it, right? And oftentimes when you think in the grand scheme of whatever you're struggling through, whatever you're going through right now, it's so minuscule in the big part of all of it. You know, at the end of the day, and we don't know when the end of our day is going to be, our time up, clock over day, but God knows. And so it's like in this time that you are on earth, why don't you want to become your best self? Why not go through the discomfort? Something that like coming out of this fast, and I think I would continue to have like these little like breakthroughs and just more clarity all the time, but choose discomfort over comfort, growth over stagnancy, action over excuses, apologies over ego, trust over disbelief, surrender over control, and most importantly, faith over your fear. That is like a huge thing, because when I think about all the things coming out of the Daniel fast, those are all the like intangible things that we really need to be able to grasp a hold of to really have a better, more fulfilling and satisfying life. A life that doesn't feel like you're missing out on anything because you are so rooted in right where I'm supposed to be and God's got me. Mentally, don't need to be anywhere else. I know that physically right now, I wish I was in the Bahamas, but I'm not. But I got God, and that's amazing. That's pretty cool. Right? I have someone that I can go to and talk to and lean on and trust and surrender and cry to and just all the things with. So beautiful. I truly am just a different person. It's so wild and so crazy, but we are here. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I will look forward to hearing from you. If you've ever done a Daniel fast, if you're thinking about doing a Daniel fast, I really want to bring community together. I've always wanted to bring community together. And at first it was built on fitness, which I think is great. But a community built on faith and how powerful that is. A community that prays together, that will stay together. And that is something too that when you go down these journeys, things are just going to change. Relationships are going to change. And it's not to say like, oh, now you can only hang out with Christian people, but it becomes about where you put your energy and how you want to spend it. I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm never going to stay up again or like going out and have a lot of fun. It's just I'm in this weird transition of like trying to figure that out. And My friend James, I heard him talking about his 1 year not drinking alcohol and how transformative that was for him, and how in the first 4 to 6 months he was like, it's awkward. You're going to feel awkward until you either find people that are on similar path and not drinking, or that you just like get over yourself and you release the stigma and the social anxiety and the doing everything just because somebody else is doing it, that you get rid of all of that stuff. And the fear of missing out, girl, you might not be missing out on anything. Don't let anyone convince you that by you walking a path and you going on a journey means that you are missing out on anything. Because you might be finding the treasure that you've been seeking and missing out. And that is all I got to say about that. Bestie, I love you so much. I will hope to see you next week.